So Bhagavan is mentioning in the verse number 66, we are doing Sankara Bhashya. So he has mentioned that there are in this whole Bhagavad Gita, there is a particular gradual process through which the person sort of ascends from a level of doing different activities to establishing himself in the Jnana Nishta or Jnana Yoga. So we had that Arurukyo, karma karanam uchyate. That is there in the sixth chapter when we discussed that. It was very clear where is somebody who is yoga rudha, shamaha karanam uchyate for him. And then he mentioned about his own devotees in the seventh chapter. We mentioned that I have four kinds of devotees: the arthas, artharthi, jigyasu, and jnani. And Bhagwan was completely unequivocal in sort of elevating the jnani as dearest to him. He's saying everyone is udara, however, jnani to atma eva me matam. He said, verse number 18 of the seventh chapter. Then agyaha karmino gatagatam kama kama labhante. So that also he has mentioned earlier, that the jnanis do not do, and other people, they will do the karmas, they'll go to Swarga, they'll come back again. Ananya chinto iyo mang ye mang paripasate tesang nityabhyuktanam yogakevam vahamiham. He has also mentioned that the people who are established in the nitya yukta yuktam atmanam akasakalpam akalmasham upasate. So this is for the jnana nishta. And dadami buddhi yugam tam yena mam upayanti te. And they can, that with this niskama karma, this particular secret of buddhi yoga, through which they will do the karma yoga as a particular paryaya in order to establish themselves in self-knowledge. So, arthat na karminaha agnya upayanti, and therefore, which means that the people who are wise, who are established in the self, they are going to get me. They are going to achieve this whole process. It's not meant for the people who are ignorant, so to say. And then, anirdesha khyuropasakaha tu adveshta sarvabhutana. This is again verse number 13 of the 12th chapter, if you remember. So there he mentions in the 12th chapter, he Adveshta sarvabhutana maitraha karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha samadukha sukha kshami santushta satatam yogi yatatma dridha nischayaha mayarpita manor buddhir yomvad bhaktaha same priyaha. So this is his glorifying the people who are sort of all the time established in the final truth of the Lord. Ityadi a adhyaya parasamapti, till the end of the chapter 12, Ukta Sadhanaha, Khetra Adhyaya in the chapter 13, Adi Adhyaya Troyukta Jnana Sadhana cha, and the 14th and the 15th. These are all Jnana Sadhana is mentioning. 13th, 14th, 15th, and also in that part of the 12th chapter. Adhishtanadi Pancha Hetuga Sarva Karma Sannyasinam. Hetuga Sarva Karma. What are these karmas? You remember that verse number? We did that. Adhishtanam tatha karta karanam cha prathak vidam vivitas cha prathak chesta daivam chaivarna panchakam atra panchakam. So these adhishtana, karta, and a karana, prathak vidam, different kind of karanas. And vividha chesta, do different kind of activity, the efforts, the perseverance that you do chesta. And you have one daivika, that divine grace which you require. So these 5 factors, behind every karma, these 5 factors are there. We had a long discussion in the Madhusudana Saraswati about all of Mimamsa philosophy. And he has mentioned just a couple of verses earlier in the 12th verse, Anishtam Ishtam Mishram Cha Trividham Karmanaha Phalam Bhavatya Atyaginam Pretya Nautu Sanyasinam Kuchit. These 3 phalas, Anishta, Ishta, and Mishra phala. This is only for the karmis, those who are anatmakya, not for the nitya sannyasis, because they have nothing to engage in. So he mentions atmekatva, atma ekatva, akartutva, jnanavatam. Those who have that atma is one, and it is not a karta. There is no agents in it. And when a person has that kind of self-knowledge, parishyam jnana nishteyam vartamananam bhagavat tattvavidam अनिष्टादि कर्म फलत्रयम परमहंस परिव्राजकानाम एवं लब्धवत लब्ध लब्ध भगवत स्वरूपात्मिक स्वशरणम न भवति. So the people who are having no self-knowledge, they are still in that intermediate level where they need to do the karmas. For them, these things will apply. But those who have become Bhagavati Ekasarana, the final ultimate thing, they are surrendered to the Lord, and they are doing jnana and stuff. For them, these things do not apply. So those who are Paramahansa Parivrajaka and they know this Bhagavad Tattva, they are not affected by it. Bhavati eva anyesham ajnanam karminam asanyasinam. And okay, these kind of phalas can affect who? Who are not sannyasis, who have not established themselves at the feet of the Lord and who are still doing karmas. Iti esa Gita Sastroktasya kartavya akartavyarthasya vibhagaha. So this Gita Shastra is saying is divided into two parts. First, Bhagavan says all of us have to do Karma Yoga. Then we have Antakarana Suddhi, and when there is Antakarana Suddhi, we are ready for Jnana Nishtha. And therefore, so karma with bhakti, with Ishwararpana Buddhi, and without Raga Dvesha, when we are doing it, without Phalasanga, the internal constitution of our mind and consciousness get purified. And in that process, we are making progress. And slowly but steadily, without any problem, we shall be established in a particular stature of sadhana, the inner journey that we have started, where we will have aspiration for knowing about the self. We will start reading Upanishads, we will start doing Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. And then we'll have at the end of it a Jnana Nibritti. A Jnana Nibritti itself is Jnana Prapti. Jnana is not sadhya because it is Nityatva, it's always there. So once you remove the clouds, the sun becomes visible. Self knowledge is like that. Then he says, so the Gita Shastra divides all the advices into two parts. In the beginning, there's a lot of emphasis on Karma Yoga, but towards the end of it, the emphasis clearly in different chapters, there is very clear indication that Bhagavan is saying that you have to become Jnana Nishcha. And then towards the end, again, he's clarifying, those of you who are not yet there, keep doing your karma, because he has the first batch of his Bhagavad Gita students, which includes Sri Arjuna. Avidya purvakatvam sarvasya karmanaha asiddhamiti ched. Now the Purvapakya, the student who is the doubting Thomas, he has a question. Sir, please tell me, what if all karmas are not as a result of ignorance? Why are you saying all karmas, whoever is doing what, is because of ignorance? This ignorance is not vyavaharika ignorance. This ignorance is ignorance in, relative to paramartha jnana. Relative to the higher self-knowledge, this is ignorance. But of course, somebody who has done a PhD, has studied literature and this and that, he is a jnani in his subject matter. He is a jnani in what sense? He is somebody who is not yet sort of established in the self, in that sense. That doesn't make him an ajnani. That will be too much of stretching the argument. But the student is asking here, the doubting Thomas, the defense lawyer, is saying, how could you say that? Avidya purvakatvam sarvasya kramana asiddhamiti ched. Can we argue that all karmas are not because of avidya? Bhagavan Bhashyakara is answering, na, Brahma Hatya Adivat. He's saying it's as good as Brahma Hatya, like for example, you murder a person. Okay, so in the spiritual textbooks, in the book of conduct, it's mentioned that if you kill somebody who is a knowledgeable person, it's Mahapapa. Still, some people do it. Why do they do it? There is, that particular, that vritti is there. They have viparita buddhi, because of which they do it. The Shastra clearly mentions don't do it, but they still do it. There must be ignorance. Similarly, the Shastra, there are a lot of karma kanda injunctions, but at the same time, the Shastra also clearly mentions about the necessity for knowing the self, because that alone is going to get us liberation. So he's saying, Brahma Hatya Adivada, Yadyapi Shastravaгаtam Nityam Karma Tathapi Avidyavat Eva Bhavati. Like, for example, a murder. The Shastra says if you kill somebody, then you will be heavily punished, you will go to the hell. But that doesn't stop from people from committing a grave error of judgment, of inflicting harm on somebody else, especially a person who is an excellent, he's a practitioner of the Shastras, a learned Brahmin. You shouldn't kill him. I'm talking about ancient India. These days, that would mean a very dignified professor or a policy advisor to the government. You shouldn't kill because that will land you in problem. However, यद्यपि शास्त्रावगतम नित्य कर्म तथापि अविद्यावत एव भवति. Same way it is mentioned, like some people are advised not to kill, they still kill. Similarly, these nitya karmas are there in the shastra, but why people do it? That is because of avidya. That is not because it's mentioned that they do it. If that were so, they would not kill because shastra says don't kill. यथा प्रतिषेध शास्त्रावगमम् अपि ब्रह्म हत्यादि लक्षणं कर्म अनर्थ कारणम अविद्या कामादि दोष वसाद बतः भवति अन्यथा प्रवृत्ति अनुपपत्तेः तथा नित्य नैमित्य काम्यानि अपि इति. The way a person, the shastra says, please don't hurt anyone, but people do it because their own raga dvesha. So what Bhagavan is saying is, okay, Shastra means that you want to go to Swarga, you do a Agnishtoma, you do a Soma Yaga, it is there. But why we are doing it? Is it because the Shastra says we are doing it? Or because we have a craving to go to heaven? There is a Putrishti Yaga. If you do it, you will get a son. But getting a son is not a joke. If you get a son, you have to educate, and that could trap you in samsara. So, one person may be interested. So, Shastra is written doesn't mean we automatically do those things. We do it because of our pravriti. And what Bhagavan Bhashyakara Sankaracharya is saying is the root of all our activities, what to do, how to do, Shastra fine. But whether to do it or not starts with your own pravriti, which at the root of it has ignorance, that avidya. व्यतिरिक्त आत्मनि अज्ञान प्रवृत्ति नित्यादि कर्मसु अनुपपन्ना इति चेत. Now the Purupakya or the defense lawyer has another question. The challenger has another question. He's saying, look here, if there is no Atma, why should one do yaga, homa, other things to go to Swarga? The body cannot go. So the Mimamsakas also accept Atma to be separate from the body. If you do not accept the Atma to be different from the body, why should you do a yaga which will take to Swarga? Because body cannot go. So let me argue then that I'm using the body and the body-mind complex to do the karmas, but essentially I agree there is an Atma and that Atma is doing the karma. That is the roundabout way in which he's trying to say that Atma has a role to play in all these karma kandas. Siddhanti says, no, don't talk like this. Chalanatmaka karmasya karmanah anatma karma kartukasya aham karomi iti pravriti darsanat. He says, haven't you seen a person is doing something, whether it's playing football or doing a job in the office or doing a certain kind of karma, some puja. Chalanatmaka karma, this work is what? It's not achala like the atma. These are all moving in nature. Okay? They happen over space and time. And then Anatma Kartukasya, and who is the agency for that? The Antakarana. Ahang Buddhi, Ahang Bhava, or for example, this Ahankara, Chitta, Ahankara, Buddhi, and Manas, this together, this Antakarana, they are the key factor behind all these movements. Aham Karomi iti pravrti darsanat, and then they say, I am doing it. Because that is the seed of ignorance, ahankara and mamakara. So, and the ajnani is confusing the mind as the self. That is his problem. Self doesn't have a role in it. He is confusing because of his ignorance, his mind, his antakarana to be the self. Then he's saying, atmiye dehadi sanghate. Then the Purvapakya, the defense lawyer, has another argument. He's saying, Dehadi Sangate Aham Pratya Gauni Na Mithya iti chet. He's saying, look here, you are saying the Anatmavit, the average person, confuses the self to be his mind. He says, my mind, who are you? I'm Mr. X. I have a degree from this university, I'm doing this job. He's only referring to his Sukshma Sarira, the subtle body, Manabuddhi Chitta Ahankara, that this Antakarana, he's referring to that. I have done this XYG, I'm 6 feet tall. Yeah, he's referring to his Sthula Sharira. He has this Sthula Sharira and a Sukshma Sharira. That he is different. So who is that Atma? He's saying, this is my body, this is my mind, this is my thought. I'm not happy, my mind is not good. That means you are not the mind, but he doesn't understand it. He's having Mithya Jnana. What the Purvapakya or the defense lawyer now started saying is, the challenger, Dehadi Sanghade Aham Pratyayo Gauni, na Mithya iti cheti, saying, no, why are you saying this? Because of ignorance. It may not be Mithya, he may be knowing he has a self, but is referring to his mind, body, etc. Gauni Britya. How? You have a very tall guy in your class. So how did you refer to him out of fun? You used to refer to him as, oh, palm tree, come here. You're referring to the tall guy as a palm tree. Or Mr. Giraffe, where are you going? You're referring to him as a giraffe. Just because he's very tall, isn't it? But you know he's not a giraffe. He's a human being. He's a good friend of yours. You're pulling his leg. That's a nickname you have given to him. So it's a Gauni Britti. So that with Gauni Britti, you are referring to him. Gaunatvena. Singho Manavakaha. This guy is like a lion. I mean, you are referring to him as a lion not because he's actually an animal or anything, but he can be very violent. You know that he has a temper and he can get very, very angry. And when he gets angry, he behaves like an animal. So you say that this guy is like is a tiger or a lion. You can say that. Or you can refer to somebody, yeah, he looks like a dazzling, he's like dazzling fire because he's very fair, he's golden color. Okay. So you are saying, so he's discussing these things. He's saying, no, that is not. Tat karya swapi gaunatva papatehe. Then if you say like this, that he is saying that I am doing it, he has that feeling. And then saying is gauni pratyaya. That is not mukhya vritti, but gauni vritti. If you talk like this, then there will be the activity also, what he's doing will also not be mukhya. That will be anarthaka because he will not go to Swarga. So it's like playing a game. So there is a guy and there is a lady and there are these 3-4 children. They are playing a game. You declare a person as Dasarath. You dress him up as Dasarath. Then he carries that name Dasarath. And there is another girl in the class, you call her Kausalya. And then there is a old guy who dresses up as an old person, you call him Vasishta. You have this play, right? Now, is Dasaratha sending his son to the jungle or anything? No, after they play, they go home. But you are addressing him as Dasaratha, Gauni Britya, because he acted like that. Similarly, you are referring to a girl as Kausalya because she's always weeping, she's losing a son. She's just these are games you're playing. So the act that you play out, that particular, that whole one act play that you perform, that is also not real because the characters are not real. Similarly, he's saying, no, tat karya swapi gaunatvopapatehe. So whatever work is being done, that also will become unimportant, not, the mukhya karya. Atmiya dehadi sangade aham pratyaya gauni yatha atmiya putri atma vai putra namasi iti loke cha api mama prana eva ayam gauhu iti tadvat न एव अयं मिथ्या प्रत्ययः तु स्थाणु पुरुषयोः agruhyamana विशेषयोः. Bhaskar is explaining what is the difference between gauna pratyaya and mithya buddhi. What is gauna pratyaya? You know that boy is not Dasarath. You are addressing him as Dasarath. You know that girl is not Kausalya. You are referring to as Kausalya because she plays that role very well in the one act play. Okay? Or she's overprotective about her friends. So you are addressing her as Kausalya. Now he's saying in Dehadi Sangate Aham Pratyayo Gauni Yatha, for example, somebody addresses his own son. You are my life. Without you, I'm dead. Is he actually referring to his son in his life? No. He knows he is different from his son, but he's saying, you are my life. You are everything in my life. So this Taittiriya Sanhita says, Atma Bhai Putra Namasi. You are everything. You are my life. Why? Because after my death, you will continue to do these particular kriyas, these rituals. You will recite the Vedas. I am old. I'm going to die. but you will start doing it. And there is a handing over ceremony. In very traditional families, there was a handing over ceremony where the father will say, I've handed over the responsibility, now I'm happy. And he will say to the son, you are Brahman, you are this, you are that. The son will say, I am this, I am this. He takes over the responsibility, father leaves this body, the tradition continues. So he is saying, iti lokecha api mama prana eva. And then somebody has a cow. He loves this cow very much. And he says, Mama prana eva I am gohu. And this is almost like my life. Iti tadvad eva na I am mithya pratyaya. This is not mithya pratyaya. He knows the cow is different from him. He loves his cow to a mass. He loves his cat or dog, a pet. He's a pet lover. So he's very fond of his pet. Wherever he goes, he wants to carry. That is fine. When he says it's my life, doesn't mean he's confusing the pet at his life. Mithya pratyaya is when you actually confuse between two things. How? In a dark night, you are coming and there is a stump or a pole, and you're confusing that as a human being. Sanurva Purushova. You're having this confusion. So at that moment, that is mithya pratyaya. You're confusing a stump or a pole as a human being. Sthanu Purushayoho Agrihямana Visheshayoho. The difference between Sthanu and Purusha, okay, that length, that it's about 5-6 feet tall, 6 feet tall of that particular stump or pole is fine. That is the similarity. What are the Vishesha? The hands will move in case of a human being. The Sthanu will continue to stand there because it's without life. This Vishesha Pratyaya, you are not, the distinction between the Sthanu and the Purusha in terms of their special attributes, you are not being able to distinguish. That's why in a dark night you're confusing a stump as a human being. That is mithya jnana. That is different from gauni vritti because the father says, you are my life. He knows you are his son. You are not his life. Okay? Na gauna pratyasya mukhya karyarthatvam adhikarana stutyarthatvad lupta upama savadena. So because of an imperfect comparison, like you're comparing a human being with a lion, you're comparing the color of a person with that of fire. So these are not perfect comparisons. You're just doing it. You're just doing it, and that is for stuti of the adhikarana. That person has a capacity for huge amount of anger and violence. So who is the adhikarana? That human being, that body-mind complex. You are referring to that as a lion, and you know the lion is different. What the lion can do, this guy cannot do. He cannot, for example, live in the jungle and take raw meat and stuff like that. You are referring to him, taking one particular aspect of him is similar to that of the lion. Adhikaran sutirtvat lupta upama savdena yatha singho devadattaha agnihi manavakaha. This devadatta is like a lion. Agnihi manavakaha. The guy is very fair. That's why he's saying his personality. Look at him. He's like a fireball. He's dazzling like a fireball. It is Singha Eva, Agni Eva. So it's like the lion or like a fireball. Kaurya Paingalyadi Samanyavatva. That guy is very fair colored, golden fair. That's why you're referring to him as Agni Manavakaha. And then he's very krura, he's very angry, he's very cruel. So you're referring to him as Singho Manavakaha. Devadatta Manavaka Adhikarana Stutyartham Eva. That whether it's Devadatta's Adhikarana, that is the foundation. Singho is that adjective which is added. The Adhikarana is being praised for good or bad reasons. Eva Natu Singha Karyam Agni Karyam Gauna Sabda Pratyaya Nimittam Kinchit Sadhyate. So that Singha or that Agni Sabda, that actually this guy can do any work of the Agni or the lion, of fire or lion. No, that's not what is mentioned here. Mithya Pratyaya Karyam tu Anartham Anubhavati. But if you do Mithya Pratyaya, that I am Karta, I am Bhukta, let me do this, then you do some activities, Papa or Punya. The Janma Mrityu, Rupa, Anartha, you have to suffer because this is not Gauna, this is Mukhyataya, Mithya Pratyatvat, you have started doing because of a faulty understanding. So you pay the price. Okay. So that human being, we experience it. Gauna Pratyaya Vishayam cha janati na es singho devadattah syat na ayam agnihi manavakahiti. In case of Gauna Pratyaya, Now it's like after Jivana Mukti, there is a Vidwan, he's Atmakyani. He knows this is my body. He says, oh my God, I'm so tired today. He knows he's not tired. He's Atmagyani. But we are not talking about those people. We're talking about normal people who actually see their body as themselves, their mind as themselves. They are unable to look beyond this body and mind. We're talking about them. Gauna Pratyaya, only when you have right knowledge about what the two things are, then you're comparing. That is a figurative speech. Gauni Pratyaya is figurative speech. तथा गौणेन देहादि संघातेन आत्मना कृतं कर्म न मुख्येन अहम प्रत्यय विषयेण आत्मना कृतं स्यात्. And then if you're having a figurative description of I am the body and mind doing this work, if that is a figurative speech, not real, if that is the case, then dehadi sangatena atmana krito. The dehadi sangata is confused as atma, and that is done by dehadi sangata, but it's not done by atma. Kritam karma na mukhyena aham pratyaya vishayena, and then it will not be mukhya aham pratyaya vishaya. Mukhya aham pratyaya vishaya will be what? The kutastha, the atma eva, that you will be aware of it. So you will have to talk about two levels of understanding of what the self is. But that is not the true. Nahi gauna singha agnibhyam kritam karma mukhya singha agnibhyam kritasyat. Now, somebody, a guy who is referred to is a fiery personality, and a very eloquent, very he's a good, great speaker, very energetic, and very light skinned. So you are saying he's a fiery personality. Fine. And then you are referring to another person, Singho Manavaka, he's like a lion. Okay, fine. Now, one guy gives a speech or something. Another guy is a great footballer. Okay, and then he plays very well. What they do has got anything to do with the real lion in the jungle, or particular fireball or something, or fire, what the fire can do? Nothing. The fire doesn't give a speech, it burns things. But this fellow is a fiery speaker. You're saying he's a fiery personality because he's light skinned and a great speaker. So Gaunatvena, if you're referring to mind body complex, you actually know what the self is. That is the Purvapaksha saying, that is the defense lawyer saying. If that is the case, then Mukhyataya, whatever you are doing, it will not be the business of the Atma. Nothing. It has nothing to do with. And then whatever suffering, but you are actually really suffering because of this confusion. The Mithya Pratyaya you have. न च कौर्येण पैङ्गल्येन वा मुख्यसिंहाग्नौ कार्यं किञ्चित् क्रियते स्तुत्यर्थत्वेन उपक्षीणत्वात्. And then, therefore, whether this is the color of the person or his ability to give a good speech or he's a little angry or is very cruel, taking that into account, what the lion does or what actually fire does can never be understood. There's no real realization here because these are mentioned only for praising that person, just to sort of boost his personality, to sort of flutter him that he's a very strong person, very masculine person. That's all you want to convey to him, and he feels great about it. Suyamano cha janito na aham singho na aham agnihi iti na singhasya karma mama agnehi cha iti तथा न संघातस्य कर्म मम मुख्यस्य आत्मन इति प्रत्ययो युक्ततरस्यात् न पुनः अहम कर्ता mama karma iti. It's a beautiful argument. He's saying, look, when you are referring to a guy that ye share hai, this guy is like a lion. He's a political leader or he's a sports person. There's another guy you're saying he's a fiery personality because he's a great speaker. Okay. If that is the case, they actually know they are neither a ball of fire, they are not a fireball, they are not a lion. These two guys know that. And therefore, they also know what the lion does. I'm not doing it, even though people call me a lion man. And even though people call me a fierce personality, a fiery personality, I don't do what the fire does. Both of them know it. However, this tathacha na sanghatasya karma mukhyasya atmana iti pratyayuktatara syat. So if that is the case, like a Jivana Mukta who has got Atmajnana, he goes to college, he takes classes, he talks to his children, he interacts with society, but he knows everything is Maya. Whenever he's a little time, he goes back into meditation. If that is the case, then I can understand. But actually, in case of the Anatmavid, the people who haven't realized the self, what kind of understanding they have? They are saying, Ahamakarta, idam mama karma, I am the agent, and this is what I should be doing. That kind of thing they have. So, do they have Gauna Jnana or Mukhya Jnana? They are not referring to the body mind as the self by figurative speech. They are speaking it as Mukhyataya. Directly they are mentioning that's because of Mithya Pratyaya, because of a faulty understanding. Yacha ahu atmehi smriti ichha prayatnehi karma hetuvihi atma karoti iti. The Nyayakas and other people, they said that look, the Atma actually it can do things. How? Because there is something called Janati, Yatate, Ichhati, Janati, Ichhati, Yatate, Karoti. So it knows the goal, what he wants to do, because there is some sanskar it remembers. Earlier, he had gone to the shop, he had two rasmalais with some rabidi, he liked it. And then he knows there is a festival and these two sweets, desserts are going to be available. So he janati, then he remembers. Ichhati, there is desire. Then yatate, he does yatna, he wants to have it. Then karoti, he buys and eats it. This whole process. So he's saying this is all happening at the end of the day through his Atmamana Sanyoga and other Indriya Sanyoga, through Atmamana Sanyoga, he's doing all that. The Nayakas can explain. But here he's saying, no, that's not true. न तेषां मिथ्या प्रत्यय पूर्वकत्वात् मैं ये इच्छा करता हूँ, I am desiring to have this, I shall have it, I'll go to the shop, I'll buy this sweet. These are all a result of a faulty understanding of what the self is, because Shastra says it's avikari, nitya, aja, isn't it? Why should you like to have rasmalai when it is satyam jnanam anantam brahma? That the self is. It's not interested in either poison or in nectar. It's beyond both poison and nectar, beyond good and bad. It is in itself. It doesn't need anything. So he's saying that's mithya pratyaya, and then he's saying mithya pratyaya nimitta ishtanishta anubhuta kriyafala janita sanskara purvika hi smriti ichha prayatnadaya. So smriti, ichha and praya. Smriti is memory. You are remembering something you had experienced earlier. Then you have desire. Then you will do yatna and you will get that work done. And you are saying these are all there in the Atma, isn't it? These are the gunas of the Atma for the Nayakas. He's saying, look here. Mithya pratyaya nimitta, at the back of these particular things, mithya pratyaya, when you have a faulty understanding, then you start imagining ishta, nishta, anubhuta, kriya, phala. Then this is good, this is bad. So you remember something where you were hurt. You remember something where you were pleased. So you will avoid where you were hurt and you will do something where you are pleased. Janita sanskara purvika hi smriti. And this smriti ichha prayatna. Always there is ishta nishta phala janita. Phala anubhuti janita. There is an experience of what you consider bad or good. And then as a result of that experience, it is there in your memory. So now you want to do something, this memory comes. It was bad or good. I should not do it. If it was bad, and if it's good, let me go for it. So, end of the day, this starts with a faulty understanding of what the self is, because this ishta, nishta, bhava, all these thoughts are associated with a faulty understanding of the self that we have already discussed earlier in several chapters. How that phala sanga, dhyato vishayan pungsha Sangasteshu pajayate. So you have, and then sanga sansayate kamaha, kamat krodha pajayate. All these things we have discussed earlier. So it's all a kind of a mental association with a few things that we glorify them and we want to achieve them. And this glorification, achievement, and everything, they have something to do with a faulty self-understanding. That self-understanding is still remotely not associated with the real truth of ourselves. Therefore, Bhagavan is saying that this is all based on an ignorant understanding of who we are at the end of the day. Yatha yasmini janmani dehadi sangada vimana raga dvesadi kritau dharma dharmo tat phala anubhavaha cha तथा अतिते अतिततरे अपि जन्मनि इति अनादिः अविद्याकृतः संसारः अतीतः अनागतः च अनुमेयः. Now he's explaining how this samsara is sansaranam, birth and death, and this whole pravaha, this whole process, it's a whole flow of births and deaths and different kind of repetitive experiences of hopes, frustrations, aspirations. We still tend to forget. That's a very terrible thing. We get shocks at different moments of time, but because of our avidya, we go back to the same thing, same craving. We don't learn lessons very easily. So he's saying, Yatha asmini janmani, like in this body, this life, dehadi sangadha vimana, then I have an identification with this body and mind. And then raga dvesadi krito dharma dharma. Then raga and dvesha, what you like, you love it, and what pains you, you hate it. Then you have this liking and aversion, attraction and aversion, and then you will do in this process some dharma and adharma. Wherever you violate the laws, you will do adharma. When you are favorable, the laws are favorable, and you're helping somebody, you will do some dharma. Dharma dharma tat phalanubhavaha, and you will suffer or enjoy the good or bad outcomes of whatever karmas you have done. Cha tatha atite. In same way, if you stretch it backwards, atite atita tare api janmani iti anadihi. So every life, the same drama, same story may have got repeated. Avidya kritah sansarah atita anagata va cha anumeyaha. See, sansara will continue till we have self-realization. It will continue for millions and millions of births going forward, and it has continued millions and millions birth going backwards. ततः च सर्वकर्म संन्यासात् ज्ञान निष्ठायाम आत्यंतिकः संसार उपरमः इति सिद्धम. And therefore he's saying, my dear friends, please understand then what I am saying, because the message is very clear. Only through sarva karma sannyasa, not for all. Bhagavan has clarified that in chapter 5th. Only a person who has done the vairagya, is ready for jnana yoga, he is having samadhamadi satka sampatti, he has viveka, he has vairagya, he has mumukshitva, and then he has all the qualifications. Then he can go to study. He's saying when he can take sarva karma sannyasa. Sarvakarma sannyasat jnana nishtayam, in jnana nishta, meditating on that truth. Shravana manana nididhyasana atyantika sansara uparamaha. You can verily, comprehensively withdraw yourself from this whole cycle of birth and death. Sansara uparama iti siddham. अविद्यात्मकत्वाच्च देहादि अभम देहाभिमानस्य तन्निवृतो देहानुपपत्तेः संसारमपत्तिः. Now, this sansara, this sarira, this mind-body complex, it is avidyaka, born out of ignorance. Okay. Vyavaharika satya, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. This body, yeah, you tap, it makes a noise. So obviously it exists. But what he's saying, dehadi sangade atma abhimana avidyatmaka. Atyantika, so avidyatmakatvat deha vimanasya, this identification is born out of ignorance, tan nibrito. So when this identification with the body mind gets weakened and washed away through proper understanding of the self, dehanupapattehe, then the body cannot be explained. If the body cannot be explained, you can't relate to it, then sansaranupattihi, then sansara also ceases to have any meaning for you. You may still be in the body, but you would see yourself as disconnected and much above and beyond the limitation of the mind and the body, and therefore the limited sansara, the material manifestations that appear as external, objective, and real, they'll continue to look like that. The way the sky looks blue and the mirage continues to happen, but you don't trust it. You are not affected by it, even if you see it. Same way, sansara anupapattihi. Dehadi sangade atmabhimanaha avidyatmakaha. This identification of ourselves with this mind-body complex is actually out of ignorance. Nahi loke gavadibhyah anya aham mattah cha anye gavadayah iti janan esu aham iti pratyam manyate kashit. Why is he saying that the kutastha, the self, is not this body-mind complex? And it's not gauna vritti, it's not a figurative speech that we are referring to the body mind as it's me, it's mine. It's not figurative speech, it's real. And this kind of real speech is emerging out of a faulty understanding, out of an ignorance of the real self. He's explaining it how. Does a person ever nahi loke gavadibhya anya aham mattah cha anya gavadeha iti janan? When you know this cow, my wife, my children, my land, my house, these are mine. You know they're different from you, but you say these are my life. Without them, I'm dead. You might say that. But a person who knows this, does he refer to them as me? Tesu aham pratyeti manyate kachit. Nobody thinks he is himself them. No, he talks like that to please them, to make them happy. Ajanan he stano purasa vijnanavat. However, in a dark night, he looks at a stump or a pole. He genuinely confuses that as a human being, and that is out of ignorance. Sthanu Purusha Vijnanavat. In this Sthanu, he has Purusha Vijnana, Purusha Vijnana. It is a human being. He thinks like that. Avivekataha Dehadi Sangate, because of lack of proper discrimination, because of inadequate analysis of who we are, we confuse the self to be this mind body complex. Kuryat ahamiti pratyam na vivekataha janan. So he cannot refer to the body mind as the self if he actually knows that he is different from the body mind. He might just, then he can talk about Gauna Vritti, like a Jivan Mukta might refer to I am not very happy today. He might accidentally say it, even though he clearly knows that he's supremely happy all the time. He has no problems whatsoever, but he figuratively might say, I'm not feeling very good. He might say that. Provided he has that understanding, then of course we can say it's fine if that is the case. Yahatu Atma Vai Putra Namasi. He's going back to the Sastriya, that Upanishad, that Taittiriya Sanghita Vakya. Atma Vai Putraha, oh my son, you are verily myself. You are my Atma. And the father says this. Iti Putre Aham Pratyaha Satu Janya Janaka Sambandha Nimitto Gaunaha. Where the father has given him birth. And the son also resembles the father in many ways. He talks like him, he loves the dishes he loves. I mean, all of us resemble, with our father in many ways. Okay? Like, for example, Wittgenstein had coined a word called family similarities. Like, for example, there are three brothers, they are similar, but actually they're dissimilar, but there will be some sort of a similarity. You'll not be able to, externalize and mark that this is the quality which all of them have. They are all different from each other, and they share some kind of similarity. It's very difficult to define. Now, this father and son, because Janya Janaka Bhava, somebody is born out of the other one. So Janya Janaka Samandhi Nimitta Gaunaha, because of that love for the son, because he resembles him, he says, you are myself, you are my Atma. Gaune Necha Atmana Bhojanadivada Paramartha Karyam Na Sakyate Kartam Gauna Singha Agnibhyam Mukhya Singha Agni Karyavat. And then with the Gaunas Karya, if you say that you are my Atma, if the son dies, would the father think I have gone to heaven because my son has died? He's gone to heaven. I'm also going to heaven. He'll be very sad. He'll break down. He'll cry. Similarly, he's saying, Gaune necha atmana bhojana adivada paramartha karyam na sakyate. Like in the Gauna Atma, if he's simply living to considering his body and his mind and all, as a figurative speech, he's referring to them as the self, then he will not do the karmas like eating and doing this, that. The way he eats and says, I'm eating, can he, that self, that Atma, is he doing something substantial, real, with these Deha, Indriya and all this? No. Gauna Singha Agnibhyam Mukhya Singha Agni Karyavat. Like, for example, with the help of the Gauna Singha, a guy who's very cruel, or a person who is a fiery speaker, you refer to him as a fiery personality. He's a very, he's a fireball if you refer to him. Can you actually cook anything with that guy because he's a fireball? No. And can you set that guy in the forest? He himself will run away out of fear. He will not be able to do what the lion does. Therefore, no mukhya karya is possible. Gaunehi indriya atmavihi kriyate set. Now the Purvapakya defense lawyer is stretching his leg a little and he's arguing, what if I argue, he's saying something additional, Because of these gauna, indriya, and deha, and all these karanas, these instruments of the self, of the system, he's saying by them the karya is happening. If I talk like this, are you okay? No. Avidya kritatmakatva tesam no gaunya atmanoho dehandriyadaya. Now, atma and the deha indriyadi, the sambandha, is not gauna vritya, it's mukhya vritya, and because of mithya jnana. Because avidya kritatmakatvat tesam, they are because of a faulty understanding. They are not even real, they are delusional. Yeah, they are vyavaharikatvena. We have eyes, ears, nose, everything. Atma doesn't have all this. That is the eye of the eyes, the hearing instrument of the hearing instruments. So, so that's completely different. Avidya krita atmakatvat tesam na gunya. So, because these atmatva that we are ascribing to the senses, to the body parts, this atmatva, the selfness we are attributing to them, is born out of ignorance. Katham tari, why so? Mithya pratyena eva asangasya atmanah sangati atmatvam. The atma is asangoham, it's permanently asanga, chidananda rupa, that is the self. Because it's only one, how can it have any association with anything? But the eye connects with the objects like pen, pencil, book, film, music, the ear connects. So this sanghati is this connection or association happens because of a faulty understanding that the self is getting connected. Self is not connecting. And you're confusing the deha indriya with the self. That is mithya jnana. That is not a figurative speech. Mithya pratyana eva. Mithya pratyana, these all things are happening, even though the Atma is actually asanga, it's free from any association. Then, tadabhave bhava, tadabhave cha abhava. Tadbhave means tad mithya pratyaya bhave. Whenever that avidya is there, tadabhava, then that you have this Atma pratyaya in the deha indriya. Whenever a person is ignorant, he confuses the body and the mind as himself. Tad abhave, when he gets to know that no, I am not the body and mind, I am pure self. Tad abhavat, he stops thinking that I am the body, I am the mind, I would like to have this, I like to have that. He gets rid of that sickness. Avivekinam hi ajnana kale. So the people who are not wise, who are avivekis, they do not have the power of discrimination. Avivekinam hi ajnana kale. They are not permanently doomed to remain ignorant. None of us. We can graduate to the next level. Balanam, like boys of these avivekis, they are like children. Drishyate dirghoham, dirghaha aham. I am a very tall guy. Gauraham, I'm very fair. Gauroham. Iti dehadi sangare atma pratyo natu vivekinam. These kind of thinking, the wise person doesn't say, oh, I'm very tall, I'm very handsome. The wise guy doesn't talk like that. The one who has atma jnana, he will not talk like that. No vivekinam. Anya aham dehadi sangahatat. What is his pratyaya? What is his understanding? I'm different from the body I have. I may have a tall body, I may have a dark body, I may have a fair body, I may have an old body or young body. He knows I'm different from all these. Iti jnanavatam. And therefore, of these vidwan people, of these knowledgeable, self-aware people, tatkale dehadi sanghate aham pratyayo bhavati. Never. In that particular deha, the sanghata they have, the body mind complex, they don't attribute selfness. There is a self in all these. No, they don't have that kind of a faulty understanding. Tasmad mithya pratyabhave abhavat. Because of mithya pratyaya, faulty understanding of the self, in the absence of that, tad abhavat, that dehatma buddhi abhavat, tat vita eva na gaunaha. So here what? Not gauna buddhi. It's not a figurative speech that you're referring to your body as yourself. It is mukhyataya. So mithya jnana. And therefore it is na gaunaha. So it is not a figurative way of saying I'm doing, I'm not doing. That's either ignorance or knowledge. You cannot say I know it, but I'm talking like that. No, that doesn't work. Prithak grihyamana, there is another argument somebody is giving, and that also he will refute. Prithak grihyamana, sorry. So the same thing of these gauna and these mithya jnana, he's now concluding it. पृथक गृह्यमाण विशेष सामान्योः हि सिंह देवदत्तयोः अग्निमाणवकयोः वा गौणः प्रत्ययः शब्द प्रयोगो वा स्यात् न अगृह्यमाण सामान्य विशेषयोः. The samanya and vishesha, singho manavaka. Samanya is what? That manavaka, that person. What is vishesata? He is like a singha. He is very cruel, has a short temper like a lion. That is vishesha. And then you have this singho manavakaha. Again, similar, the samanya thing, a human being. But you are referring to him as fire. Agni manavakaha. You are referring to him as fire. Why? He's a great speaker, energetic, very light skin. Okay. Now here, the samanya and vishesha, if you know that this is the, particularly I'm referring, this is a vishesha singha manavaka and this is tutyartham. Actually, singha is there in the jungle and he's not a human being. And the human being is not a lion either. When you have this clarity, then if you say it's a figurative speech, I don't have any problem. Now, if there is a boy, a little boy, a grown-up person can refer to a very sweet, pretty girl, is saying your face is like the moon's. You have the face that, your face is like the moon. Now, a little boy who doesn't know what is the face, what is the moon, he cannot use that. So when you have knowledge about both, you can use figurative speech. And when you have a clarity on the samanya and vishesha, there cannot be mithya jnana. Here, I am the body mind. Is saying I am doing this. I am the karta. Here, that I, what you are bringing, which is also there in aham pratyaya in the atma jnana. But you are associating that aham with dehadi buddhi, dehatma buddhi. So that is the problem there. And it is not gauna. It is mukhya. It is faulty knowledge. Yattu uktam shruti pramanyad iti na. Then he's saying, because there is a mention in the Shruti Vakyas that you do these karma kandas. How can you say that this kartutva and bhaktritva and this ahankara and everything is all fault? All is at fault because the Vedas have prescribed injunctions asking us to do different kind of duties. Yattu uktam shruti pramanyaditi na tat pramanyasya adrushta vishayatvat. No. He's saying it doesn't apply here in Vedanta. Why? When you say Vajrahasta Purandaraha, that Indra, his hands are very powerful and you should worship him. And you're saying Agnishtomena Swarga Kama Jajeta, you do this Agnishtomi Yaga, you'll go to Swarga. Can you see Swarga here? Is it Drishta Pratyaya Prapta? No, you cannot see it. Therefore, you are believing in what is written in Shastra. If somebody says that during spring everything is colorful and beautiful, why do you have to refer to Vedas? You can directly see it. And whatever is written in the Vedas, this will have to have some logical meaning. It cannot say something which is completely contradictory to what you can actually see. That's not going to be a fair argument. That he is now giving here. Yattu uktam shruti pramanyadeti na tat pramanyasya adrishta vishayatvad. This Veda Karma Kanda and all, they are mentioned about adrishta. What logically you cannot argue about, we cannot have pratyakya. The Atma Jnana, the Vedanta is based on logic. Of course, there are Shruti Pramana, there are certain sentences, but we don't have to dabble in too much of mysticism. This is very logical, very rational. प्रत्यक्षादि प्रमाण उपलब्धे अनुपलब्धे विषय अग्निहोत्रादि साध्य साधन संबंधे श्रुते प्रामाण्यम. So if you do Agnihotra, you will go to Swarga. Sadhya is Swarga, sadhana is that Agnihotra yaga. Okay, that Kriya. So because pratyakshadi pramana anupalabdhe, but there is no direct experience of how to go to Swarga by doing these fire rituals. You cannot observe it, and therefore you believe in what is written in Veda. Na pratyakshadi visaya adrushta darshanarthatva pramanasya. But if somebody says in winter one should cover himself with blanket, why should you refer to the Vedas? You can directly do it because you know it through experience that in winter you need blankets. Tasmad na drishta mithya jnana nimitasya. This mithya jnana directly possible to understand if you study a bit of Upanishads and argue about it. So drishta mithya jnana nimitasya aham pratyaya. This aham pratyaya, I am the self you are saying, referring to the body. It's very clear, it's illogical. That fellow doesn't realize it. So it is drishta agyan nimitasya dehadi sanghade gaunatvam kalpayitum sakyam. So therefore, when you know that is a mukhya pratyaya, how could you confuse that with the body and say this is the self? You cannot say it. So you cannot take refuge in the Veda Vakyas, saying that because the Veda says this, let it be true. That will not be very logical. And he's now mentioning in the next how Veda generally shall not say something which is completely, which contradicts rational argumentation. Nahi Shruti Satam api Shitaha Agnihi Aprakaso va iti bruvan Pramanyat upaiti. If there is a Shruti Vakya in Veda, somewhere it is written. Okay, we have just about crossed the time. Okay, not an issue. We have another, how many pages? Yeah. So another 1.5 pages of 66. So we'll carry forward from here tomorrow. So I'll stop here. And if you have any questions, you can ask or we can do the Shanti Mantras. So, to conclude in just one or two sentences, what he has done so far is that there is one argument that this particular identification with the mind body complex is a figurative speech, and that is being refuted. If it's only figurative speech, the karma you will do will not be real. It will not be mukhya karma, number one. Number two, you cannot compare this with what you see in case of a Singha Manavakaha or Agni Manavakaha, because when you are doing a figurative speech and referring to something, that has nothing to do with the actual lion or a fireball. So you cannot confuse that way. Number two, when you know the difference between two things and then you are making a comparison, that is a figurative speech. But the Agyani, the Anatmavit, is referring to the body-mind complex as the self, but he doesn't know the difference. So Mukhyataya is doing it. So here it's Mithya Pratyaya and it is not Gauna Vritya Kathita. That's what he mentioned. We'll go forward tomorrow.